readings or a reading from the Science of Mind magazine, The Daily Guides. If you've never been here before, well, welcome. Every day, Reverend Lisa, my colleague, reads from, right now, the Ernest and Fenwick Holmes Great Classic, which is a huge epic poem. And I read from the Science of Mind magazine, typically the Daily Guides. Sometimes I'll read other stuff, but by and large, it's the Daily Guides. Why I picked that in the first place, I don't know. We both started doing these readings right at COVID. When COVID hit, we knew we had to keep community together. So when our service went online, we decided that we would actually put more stuff out online to try and keep people together. Because I don't know if you remember at least the first few months of the pandemic, pretty well the whole world, at least the whole of the US, was locked down. Some people didn't do it, and some people paid the price. And I don't want everybody losing vaccines, but that's another story. But anyway, bottom line is that we decided to do these readings as a way to keep in touch with everyone. And I also remember some of the other organizations to which I'm a member, like the Chamber of Commerce. We had some, let's say, less interesting business meetings. But it wasn't the fault of the chamber. It was just because the environment didn't lend itself to what we were trying to do. But I think these do. I didn't talk to Reverend Lisa about her reading this morning, but her husband, Tom, told me that it was a huge passage from the epic poem there. I mean, and it's an epic, it's huge. And the voice, it's called The Voice Celestial. I'm sorry, I didn't mention the name, The Voice Celestial. So, yeah, look it up sometime. It's kind of interesting, but it is a big tome. Anyway, bottom line is that I ended up doing these readings, and sometimes I read from other stuff. Like, for instance, there's a dog feature every other month in the Science of Mind magazine called Murphy's Law. And Murphy, the Human Whisperer, it's written obviously by his master, but theoretically it's the dog talking to us. And I'll read that in the next few days, actually. But today's reading, to get back on topic, it's very similar to yesterday's, in all honesty, but it's kind of moving along more in the direction of kind of explaining, if anybody really can explain, how manifestation occurs. As Jesus said, it's done unto you as you believe. And this morning, our speaker was one of our practitioners. He's a graduate from the Naval Academy. And he was kind of making the difference, which I've made sometimes, about the difference between belief and knowing. And I've often said in the past, I think Jesus went beyond belief and he went into knowing. He was absolutely certain that something would happen. We've all experienced that, though. We just know it's going to happen. But anyway, here's a little bit, as you might say, behind the scenes as to how that works. And the first two quotes, of course, are from Ernest Holmes. The whole thing is called Using the Law of Mind. Of course, that's the mind of the divine. We must all learn so to control the inner life that outside things do not make an impression on our mentalities. So in other words, when bad things happen in the world or around us, that we're strong enough to withstand that and look beyond it. And that's from Creative Mind, and it's on page 22 of that book. And from the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes' major work, on page 300, he says, we should expect the best and so live that the best may become a part of our experience. We should expect the best and so live that the best may become a part of our experience. And then this is Reverend Margaret, our writer for this month, who says, Ernest Holmes frequently referred to one of the activities of the infinite mind, aka God, the divine, as the law of cause and effect. Many phrases describe this. As we turn to God, God turns to us. What goes around comes around. As a person thinketh, so are they, to name a few. As well as the vast creativity of the mind of God, there is an element of it that automatically responds in kind to the nature of our thoughts, hence the law of mind, sometimes called the universal subconscious, universal subjective. It's all the same thing. And she says, what does this mean? Well, essentially, it means that the ways in which we think will return to us as some form or condition in our lives. In other words, our lives will be about what we expect them to be. Are we thoughtful? Are we optimistic? Are we ready to participate? If so, we will generally find that these positive outcomes are reflected in our days. On the other hand, if we are critical and negative and down on ourselves and others, our days will generally reveal gloomy, unsatisfying situations. Obviously, it becomes important to be attentive to the workings of our minds. Why? So that we will consciously engage the mind of God in the most uplifting, creative responses. Daily, we can scan our thinking patterns to make sure that they work for our good. To live happy, productive lives, lives that are under our control, it is definitely worth the effort. And as I said, well, you didn't watch yesterday, you wouldn't know. I said yesterday that what really counts is the direction of our habitual thinking. Where is our habitual thinking? Are we habitually thinking positive stuff or are we habitually thinking negative stuff? So, a huge chunk of what happens, how God reciprocates to us, or the mind of God reciprocates to us, is in her habitual thinking. That's not to say that when we really want something, whether it's better health or more money or whatever, or a good job for a friend of ours, that we don't go into prayer and we do specifically pray for those things. That is another aspect, and that's what we all do, at least the ones of us who practice this. But the other thing that Reverend Margaret's pointing out right now is it's our habitual thinking that actually directs the general course of our lives. So do you want to go one way? You want to go the other way? And as I've mentioned oftentimes in the past, we've got friends whose lives are often interrupted by disasters. And if you talk to them and when you're around them, you know that their habitual thinking is in that disaster mode. And because they've been doing this for a long time, they're really good at it. And they create stuff that they don't want to create, but it's all this habitual thinking that's going on in their minds. It's the thoughts plus the feelings. I said belief, thought plus feeling. So when your habitual belief systems subconsciously, eventually, consciously at one time, but eventually subconsciously are going on all the time, they're producing results. It's kind of like when you learn to drive a car. I learned to drive what is called a standard shift or a stick shift. Sometimes it's actually called a manual, where I come from, manual drive car. But at first it's really hard because with an automatic, it's two pedals. It's the gas pedal, the accelerator, if you like, and the brake pedal. That's it. Yeah, you put it in forward gear, you put it in reverse, neutral, park, and so on. But when you're driving, it's just two pedals. But when you're driving a stick shift, a manual car, then you've also got a third pedal called a clutch. And you have to engage that clutch when you're changing gears. And if you don't do it properly, then you're going to hear some awful crunching sounds as things happen in the gearbox that shouldn't happen in the gearbox of the car. But eventually, you learn to just do it automatically. You just do these things automatically. And driving anyway, you do a lot of stuff automatically. You automatically look in the rear view mirror to see if there's anybody behind you. You look in the side mirrors to see if there's somebody. And you actually, if you're sensible, you turn around both ways. But you don't have to think about doing this. You do it automatically because it's become a habit. And it's the habits of thought that we're talking about today. If you have really positive thought habits, you're going to produce positive results. If you have negative thought habits, you're going to produce negative results. I think it was Meister Eckhart who said something like an apple seed grows up into an apple, a pear seed grows up into a pear, and a God seed grows up into God. And he was talking about human beings. So what you keep injecting into the universal subjective is good. So our way of praying is called affirmative prayer, spiritual mind treatment. And it goes something like this, that we recognize, and I recognize, that beyond the universe, beyond everything, there is a power that I call God. And that power is all there is. And because it's all there is, I'm an expression of that one power, that one source. And I know that that power of the divine is flowing through me. And I can use it, and I am using it now to the extent to which I believe, and I believe it is flowing through me. So I can claim for all the people who are helping all the victims in Bangkok, Thailand, and Myanmar, that they are receiving help from all around the world, and that they are relieving all the people who are injured, and they are actually finding people still alive in the rubble. I can claim this because I can see it in my mind's eye. I can feel it. I can know it. And beyond all this, it is the power of the divine that's going through me to help me know this. And it's the power of the divine that is bringing these things about in this material universe. And I release this word into that divine law with humble gratitude, knowing that it's done. And so it is. Reverend Lois will be here tomorrow morning at 9:15. Actually, she will be on Creative Life Spiritual Center's Facebook page at 9:15. And I'll be back on the various channels that I broadcast to somewhere around about 5 tomorrow evening, but I am doing a mediation tomorrow afternoon, and with mediations, it could go on for 5 hours, which would mean it wouldn't finish till 6 o'clock. So who knows? But I will be back tomorrow evening at some stage in the proceedings. So until next time, namaste.